Hey, welcome to the Publish, Promote, Profit podcast with me, Rob Kosberg. Every week, I interview thought leaders and experts who have used a book to grow their income and their impact. So tune in weekly for these interviews so you can learn how to use your own best-selling book and go from hunting for clients and opportunities to instead being the hunted. Hey, welcome everybody. This is Rob Kosberg with the Publish, Promote, Profit podcast. Excited to bring you a great guest today. Mr. Bruce Wright works with ultra high net worth individuals in exit planning and 100-year legacy plans. Bruce is the best-selling author of the Wright Exit Strategy, Wealth, How to Create It, Keep It, and Use It. I think you're going to love the podcast today, especially if you're interested in an exit planning potentiality for your business, if you're interested in leaving a great legacy for yourself, for your children, your grandchildren, even those that come far past that. So Bruce, great to have you here. Let's dive right in. So many questions to ask you today about your expertise.
Hello, Rob. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm having a pretty fantastic day. You know, I went to a virtual business model in 2010.
I wish I did.
And never looked back.
Yeah.
You know, it was like one of the scariest, hardest things because I was deeply addicted to having prestigious office space and, you know, magnificent conference rooms and stuff like that. And the economic crisis hit and I was hemorrhaging cash at about 50 grand a month. And I decided to sublease out my space, found a music company. Actually, they came knocking on our door and looking to lease our space. So it was
nice.
The universe lining up. And I realized that I was spending 35 minutes in each direction every day to get to and from the office. I had people driving as much as 90 minutes in each direction. And we almost never went to the office. We did conference calls and there was no Zoom back in those days.
Sure.
And I said, we're doing like 98% of our business either at clients' locations or via phone conferences.
Yep.
We made that shift a long time ago. But our business is different than a lot in that most of our clients are either owners and founders of Fortune 500 companies or Fortune 1000 companies. And, you know, some of the private equity players don't release any of the information or they easily make that list. And then we do have some corporate executives, what I would describe as sort of the C-suite men and women who run the enterprises. And in many cases, you know, in their own right, they're worth, you know, 10, 20, $30 million, something like that. But most of my business is with the owners and founders of companies.
Interesting.
One of your guys reached out to me to see if I'd be interested in doing a podcast to help you promote your business. And so, of course, I took a look at your videos and interviews, and I thought, you know, this is fantastic what you're doing because I encourage my clients to write books.
Beautiful.
And none of them ever do. A few of them do and have, you know, become Amazon bestsellers and stuff like that. But, you know, usually, so at the core of my business is exit thinking and planning. So they're usually moving into a complete newly imagined life and to do post selling their business.
Yeah.
And I was watching your videos and I thought, you know, I just had a breakthrough conversation with one of my clients last week. And of course, he's got his team of people on the call, and which is, you know, normal. When the client finds me, there's a whole litany of existing advisory level people, lawyers and accountants and so forth. And they're all highly skeptical. Who is this guy? Then the fear is that I'm somehow going to come in and replace them, which is ridiculous.
Take their job
not
away.
A lawyer or an accountant. Sure. Yeah, exactly. But they're super protection oriented.
Yeah.
It was a great breakthrough because the lawyer said to Steve, is the client's name, during the call, he said, you know, I pointed out like 3 things that Steve had done that were extremely rare and could be put into a book. And not only would that bring him a sense of significance and fulfillment to get that music out of him and share it with other people, but it would actually attract buyers for one of the private equity companies that he still owns. And I said, if you write that book in the correct way, it will actually attract unsolicited offers. And then your whole thing sort of fell in my lap. And I went, okay, well, I'm never going to do what Rob does. I just don't have the patience for it. And, but I think it's great. I think somebody someplace needs to do it. And I thought your videos were clear and concise. And, I just thought it was a really cool thing. But I think when your guy reached out to me, and I apologize, I don't remember his name, so I'll just call him your champion.
Yeah.
For now. I thought he did it I almost never pay attention to anybody who sends me emails or calls my office or whatever, because almost all of them are trying to pitch me some, bag of crap that I'm not interested in.
Right.
My favorite is, we're going to help you get more leads.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And, as soon as you see that word, they have no connection to my audience at all. But I thought, I could probably connect you to multimillionaires who want to get their music out of them.
Yeah.
And express it in a way that is helpful to people and brings them a sense of significance and joy and impact. And I don't have the patience to walk them through it. In the early stages, when I was doing at the very early stages of my writing career, it was not only was it accidental from my perspective, it was unthinkable. There's nobody like you around encouraging people like me. I happened to give a speech for the Burbank Library Association in Southern California. And in the audience, there was a couple, Rick and Chrissy Madden. And they approached me afterwards and said, hey, would you consider turning that speech into like a 2-part article for our magazine? They owned this magazine that went out mostly to financial people. And I said, well, I have no idea how to write an article. I don't think I could do that. And then they said something that was magical. They said, why don't we just record the next one? We'll transcribe it. We'll turn it into an article. You edit it and help us make sure that it's, accurate. And then we'll release it. And that became a 3-part article. Meanwhile, during the course of about 3 months where those articles were being released, I did some other speeches, and we turned those into little booklets that were about maybe 20 pages long on a variety of topics related to the financial world. And in the back of their magazine, they offered those, and we sold over 100,000 copies of those little booklets.
No kidding. That's amazing.
It was like completely effortless. All I had to do was give the speech. They transcribed it. They did a great job. They were very competent writers, so they would write it in a way that was even far more eloquent than I could write it.
Sure.
And all I had to do was edit it for accuracy. It was a piece of cake. And then my first paid speaking engagement came as a result of one of that. And I got a phone call from an insurance company. And they said, I'd never heard of them, but, there's like thousands of insurance companies. And they said they'd read this article that I had done on 1035 exchanges. And, would I be willing to come and give a speech at their big event? And, I was trying, like, no one had ever asked me to do that. And I said, but what do you have in mind? They told me, they said, and by the way, what's your speaker's fee? And I said, well, tell me, what your budget is, and let's see if we can make something work, which was my best response to how the hell do I know what I should charge you? And they said, well, how does $5,000 sound? Now you got to remember, this was like 1985.
Oh, nice.
So their deal was, it was in Palm Springs. So I live in Southern California. So it was 90 minutes or 2-hour drive. And they gave my wife and I a suite at this fantastic resort. All of our expenses were paid, all of our meals, everything. And that was how my speaking career
cool
got launched. And so I saw what you were doing. I thought, man, so again, I don't have any desire to do this for people, but I'd be happy to lend my voice and influence to what you're doing, because I think you touched on this in your videos, and I thought you handled it really well. You talked about the Kardashian syndrome.
Right. Conundrum.
Yeah, it is a conundrum, right? So you have this universe of people who want to be considered thought leaders, but they've never actually had a creative thought in their lives, right?
Right.
And so one of my friends and I were joking around about this subject one day. His name's Kirk. And he said, well, they're thought repeaters, but they mischaracterize themselves as thought leaders. And I thought, Rob and I should do a segment on that.
That'd be cool.
Because, again, if you're not saying something that's really, really relevant to a particular audience, you're not going to attract anybody. And the only way to attract an audience, at least in my lifetime experience, is to cover topics that are crucially important to that audience that nobody else is talking about in the way that you talk about it. And you use Tony Robbins as an example, and you're saying, well, lots of people have written books about money,
right?
But a lot of people are interested in his perspective on it.
Exactly.
Between you and me and the lamppost, I can't imagine why anybody would be interested in anything Tony Robbins has to say, because he is truly the preeminent thought repeater in the history of the world. And I give him great credit for like this massive audience that he has, but it's like this universe of blind people following somebody who's slightly less blind than they are.
True.
And they think he's amazing. And so rather than, like, I never argue with any of that. I just go, well, that was the guru you needed at the time.
Right.
And, once you get to the point where we sort of self-discover that you've run out of respect for whatever that guru is offering, then you start to come across other people who are actual thought leaders and can go, like people say, well, how deep can you go? And my sense of it is, if you can't go all the way through and come out on the other side of the earth in China, you're not deep enough in the highly discerning space. And so if you think of it as a pyramid, you've got this mass of people who think Susie Orman is brilliant.
Yeah, I talk about her a lot.
She has nothing to say that's actually brilliant. And there's a whole bunch of people like her.
Sure.
And, but
they're New York Times bestsellers, many of them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I got Amazon bestseller status without any effort whatsoever, because a little company called Merrill Lynch placed an order through Amazon for 25,000 copies of a book that I wrote.
Nice.
And so all of a sudden that book was boom. But, in corporate sales, we probably sold 300,000 or 400,000 copies of that book.
Is that the Wright Exit Strategy, that book?
Yeah. And we had to take it off of Amazon because people were misusing, and I say people, financial advisors were misusing the book, claiming they did what was in the book. And then people would sue the advisors, and then their lawyers would name my company. First, my lawyers would call their lawyers and say, you better drop us from the suit or we're going to whack you for malpractice. So we've never actually been sued by any client ever. But the Wright Exit Strategy, classic example, poorly written. I had virtually no writing skill at all. I took it and broke it into components, hired high school students, had them give me book reports. And until 10th graders could succinctly articulate what was in each chapter, we didn't release the book. So I literally dumbed it down to the 10th grade reading level, because as it turned out, in my universe of extremely wealthy, discerning people, it's not uncommon for a primary decision maker to only be able to read and comprehend at about a 9th or 10th grade reading level. And even if they had a college degree, it doesn't mean that they could understand things at like the MBA, PhD level.
Sure. So
that book is a classic example.
They don't have time for that. They don't have time to mess with that. They want to read it and understand it.
It's got to be like, I literally put cartoons in the book. We ran a contest at a art college up in San Francisco, and we paid those students for their art, for the cartoons that are in the book. And it was fascinating to see what they came up with, because I never would have come up with those cartoons. But I mean, now it's, there's this entire universe of people. My most recent manuscript, which is almost done, we did an early sort of sneak peek with it to about 200 people. And literally, astonishingly, I got a phone call from a publisher, from a producer with PBS, and they want to do a PBS special.
Nice.
On the book.
And what is the book? What is this next book coming out?
I probably could release it today. Like, it's literally like that ready, but there's about 4 chapters that I want to add before I release it, because it's only like about 100 pages right now.
And the subject matter?
It's called The Apples of Your Genius. The subtitle is Stewardship Over Self and with Others.
Interesting.
So what I do in that book is I teach people a skill set that you might remember from back when you were in the public education system. Until it was purged from the public education system, there were teachers deeply dedicated to teaching us how to think for ourselves.
Yeah. And
that became conspicuously absent probably in the 1980s. And it became a sort of the university of leftist programming. And I thought, I don't care what people's politics are. I try to be neutral on politics as much as I can, but I'm grossly offended at the lack of due diligence, the lack of unbiased research, and just sort of the acceptance of programming, and how people don't think for themselves. They don't think things through. So I decided in a book that I've never released, which is called Transcendent Thought and Market Leadership 1.0, the subtitle being how to achieve market dominance in any profession anywhere in the world. Again, just by sharing that with about 200 people, it just flooded me with like so many opportunities that I couldn't scale up if I released that book officially. So you're in the space where you've got all these people who like can't scale, like they're coaches and financial advisors and probably psychologists and yoga instructors are like all over the place.
You name it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I figured if we just sort of gave them some formulaic ways, so I'll give you, here's something that I would share with your audience, which is when I was writing my first book called The Wright Exit Strategy, it was a expanded version of a booklet that we had released about 3 years earlier, which is called Seeing the Elephant. And we sold hundreds of thousands of copies of Seeing the Elephant, effortlessly, no marketing, no budget, just word got out. So when I'd have a couple of publishers that were after me to, turn it into a book. And so I submitted the business plan, and they all thought my business plan was insane and it couldn't work. And of course, my response to that was, hello, you read Seeing the Elephant, you contacted me and asked me for the business model. I put it on paper and sent it to you, and you literally told me it wouldn't work. Like, think about it. I didn't chase you.
Right.
You came to me, which is like a major fundamental cornerstone of my business, is the attraction of ideal opportunities rather than the chasing of them.
Become the hunted instead of the hunter.
You said it perfectly in exactly that way in one of your videos. So there's a formula for doing that. And my formula was really simple. What I said in that business proposal was, so I'm going to write this book, which is an expansion of Seeing the Elephant. And what I'll do is, there'll be an advisor at Payne Weber who will read it and will think, I've got 30 clients I need to send this to. And then they'll buy 30 copies. They'll get a significant impact with those people. And then they'll order another 50 copies. And so that's how we're going to generate massive book sales. And they literally said this was impossible.
Right.
While I was doing it. Like I was literally doing it. And they were telling me it was impossible. And I thought, these people are idiots. Like I don't even know how to break through that level of density, right? They're so stuck in their status quo thinking. So I signed a contract with a publisher for the Wright Exit Strategy. and we were at Galleys. I just had received the Galleys from them. And about 3 days later, I got an official notice from the bankruptcy court that the publisher had filed bankruptcy.
Ouch.
So now my problem was I had pre-sold 50,000 copies of a book, and the publisher was in bankruptcy.
And you need
so
the
I
book.
had to have my lawyer. Yeah, I had to have my lawyer go to the bankruptcy court and get the rights to my book back. And so I had to self-publish that book because I had orders to fill, and there was no. And listen, this is 1996, and self-publishing was almost non-existent, right?
Yeah,
So I mean,
rare.
we literally had to figure out how to do it. And so I fulfilled our order for 25,000 copies at Payne Weber, 25,000 copies at Smith Barney. They both came back and ordered over 100,000 copies within a matter of a few months.
Incredible.
Merrill Lynch jumped on the bandwagon. And where we made the most of our money was, so what happened was these things that I wrote were effective Trojan horses. And so what they did for advisors who couldn't articulate anything special about themselves, secret is because there's nothing special about their offerings.
Right.
They had these books, this booklet and this book, which was just full of transcendent ideas communicated at like a 10th grade reading level. So it worked. It brought clients in the door, created opportunities for them. And that's why they'd originally think, well, I'm going to send it to 10 people and see what happens. And then they would come back and they go, okay, I need to send it to like another 50. And then be like, I need to send it to like another 300 people. And so that was where that's how we scaled up. And then, of course, where we made the real money was in the intellectual property licensing space of operating systems and business models to those companies. And so the book sales were, you can make a few $100,000 a year net profit selling books easy.
Yeah.
But I wanted like millions of dollars a year in net profit. And so that was really the IP licensing and the training courses. And back in those days, I'm still a young man, and I'd travel all around the United States, Canada, Australia, and offers to go everywhere in the world, really, and do training courses. Well, now you can just do them on Zoom.
Sure.
And I guess in theory, you can, like right now, I'm sitting in a spare bedroom in a house, and it looks like I'm in Maui. And I could communicate with 1 billion people, and communicate the ideas. So I'm like a huge fan of what you're doing. I think you're doing it with a grace and elegance that is extremely uncommon.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to send clients your way. And if you want to do a Zoom and sort of break things down for people, I'll give you an example. The Wright Exit Strategy, which I never want to open and ever read a single passage in. I can't get away from it. So one of my friends, probably 4 years ago, is like insisting that I do e-courses on the Wright Exit Strategy. His name's Michael, and he's down in San Diego. And I'm like, there's no way I'm going to do that because I've completely outgrown that book. It's not really that relevant to my business model moving forward. And it's so badly written that I just can't even stand to look at it. And he goes, well, you may feel that way, but for, lots of people, it's like life altering.
Yeah.
And he had convinced me to take a book that I was working on called Transcendent Thought and Market Leadership and not simplify it to the 10th grade level because he wanted to use it as curricula for his international MBA course at Beijing University. And here's my natural response is just to try to be transparent with people. And I said, Michael, I don't speak Chinese, never been to China, don't ever want to go to China. And I've never written a book at the MBA, PhD level. He goes, well, the manuscript is MBA, PhD level right now. Just, put a cover on it and, let me use it as the curriculum. That was the only release we did.
Really?
Like that was it.
So you actually did go through and allow that.
Yeah. And, but it's the only book that I've ever written that I didn't officially release or make available to the public. Although you could get it like Barnes and Noble and Amazon and places like that.
You can?
Yeah.
It's available now?
Yeah. And they have this print on demand thing, which is wonderful because back in the old days, I used to have to go print 50,000 or 100,000 copies and then store them someplace until they were sold.
Yeah. What a mess. So better, so much better now.
Oh yeah. And people are capable of, logging in and buying a book. It's even people who are 80 years old can do that. So, and that book is a classic example. Like somebody shared the art with me and I licensed the artwork from the artist. And I said, I think I want this to be a book cover in the future. And she said, well, what's the book about? I don't know, but I love the art.
Yeah.
And if you look at the artwork, it's this person holding an armful of ordinary eggs, and sitting on the person's head is a goose that lays golden eggs.
Okay.
And so I thought, most people don't realize that inside of them, there's a genius that has the capacity to lay golden eggs, and they're just completely disconnected from it. Mm. And their life is so occupied with all the ordinary common eggs, and they're so attached to them that they don't want to risk dropping any of those eggs. And so when I was writing this book, I reached out to Leslie and said, I think I'm writing the book that's relevant to your art. And of course, her take on it was, I never imagined my art being on the cover of a book or that being used in this way, because that's not what I was thinking at all when I painted it. And she said, but your perspective on like the human psychology of it is, completely outside my imagination, but I love it. So, go ahead with it.
Love it.
So I featured some people in the book, and they've been giving the book out to people. And some of them they literally get clients just by saying to the potential client, when you look at this piece of artwork on the cover of this book, what does it cause you to think about? And then they'll say that they're featured in whatever chapter and leave the book. And they literally close deals off of the artwork on the cover of the book.
Nice.
So it's like, those are the kinds of things that we could easily share with people.
Yeah.
But I'll say this publicly, till hell freezes over. Like, I'm not going to be their guide and help them pick out the artwork for the cover of their book. I mean, that's
don't worry. We have our own in-house graphic artist. He does all that stuff.
Yeah. And so that's what I love about it. Is like, I can just turn it over to you. Like, I can feel good about helping other people, but I don't actually have to do any of the work.
So what is the with the people that you're working with, these very, very high level successful entrepreneurs, some of them C-suite, what do you see as their big motivation potentially to write a book? Is it more about a legacy? I mean, they're not looking to grow their careers anymore, or maybe they are. Maybe they're looking to transition into a consulting type practice, or what do you see as their potential motivation to write a book?
I think it's all across the board, Rob. It's everything that you just described.
Yeah.
And
legacy.
For some people, it's purely an ego play. They want to say they wrote a book and they were a best-selling author and they checked that box. It's on their bucket list. And so there's that. But there's other people that are really looking to make a profound difference in the world. Maybe they want to maybe they're associated with an organization like Doctors Without Borders, and they need to attract financial sponsorship to what they're doing. And a book would make that much easier.
Yes.
Now, of course, in my universe, the client might be willing to put $2 or $3 or $5 million of their own money into furthering a mission like that, a charitable purpose.
Right.
But they need 50 million to really execute the vision.
Right.
And if they said to their wife, honey, I want to take 50 million of our 100 million and put it into my, the wife will think harebrained scheme.
Right.
Right. But they can get 5 million. And they just need to figure out a way to leverage that. And I think what you're talking about is how you can use books to leverage yourself and broaden your reach and your impact. So it's just a mixed bag of that. But, I go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I love how he used a pyramid to simplify the visualization of it. When you're moving up elevating towards the top of the pyramid, it becomes self-actualization. Am I living the life I really want to live on my terms?
Yep.
Well, if you got $300 million, and you're not living the life that you want to live, I guess you got to look in the mirror and ask that person in charge, what the hell's wrong?
Right.
Like, what are you attached to, and what's going on that's causing you to live a life below your potential? Because it can't be about the money.
No, not at that point.
You got other people who are living off Social Security and they're just super happy and they feel fulfilled and significant enough. And so it's not about the money for them either. But that's sort of my universe is, people wake up and they look around the mansion, one of three, and they say, is this all there is?
Right. Right.
And I think there's like so many entry points for what you're doing. It's about pulling their music out of them. Yeah. And helping them imagine what their impact could be. And the writing of the book is essential. Most of them have zero writing skills, which brings me to like the third point you make on your videos, which is you don't have to be a great writer.
Yeah. Don't write a single word.
Yeah. And it's like Chris and Rick Madden, they wrote those articles. All I did was I gave the speeches. I'll take credit for I designed the speech and delivered the speeches. And then they turned them into well-written articles, which I did not at that time have the skill sets to do. Yeah. And, but that was how I learned to become a writer. And I would say probably every week I get an incoming inquiry from somebody who wants to write a book that they can make a lot of money off of. And the essence of their comments is basically this: Bruce, I'm a way better writer than you are. I've got a garage full of books I can't sell to anyone. Like, what am I doing wrong? Like, they don't say it that way usually, but that's...
I've had people say that to me directly.
So exactly what I'm talking about. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And listen, if you're sitting there trying to write, poetic prose, right? Okay, but that's not the kind of writing I do, and I'll be blunt about it. I think the apples of your genius will sell at least 5 to 10 million copies. It will be effortless for me because all I have to do is show up and shoot the PBS show and sign some of the corporate licensing deals, and we'll sell millions of copies of the book. So how do you make that happen? How do you write in such a way that people not only value it personally, but they want more copies that they can give away to colleagues and family members and friends, because it creates an elevated dialogue, an elevated perspective on life or business or finance or whatever your topic is. I think I kind of discovered a formula for that. I'm sure you did too. There might be some differences in our formulas, but I think that's the great thing about having multiple voices. Yeah. And I'm excited to see, what the books are going to be that are going to come out of people over the next 5 or 10 years. And it's going to be interesting to see how you moved to Florida. So I did. I'm going to be blunt. You picked Florida for some really good reasons. And one of them was you'd be able to execute your business without the government coming in and hammering you with bullshit policies, which they claim is all about science. Yeah, not the least of which is 13.3% tax rate in California and cost of living through the roof. And all those things, all the above. So you have this totalitarian takeover of the world. I just read today that George Soros and Bill Gates have bought out the #1 COVID testing platform in the world. Did they? Oh my gosh. Let's put the foxes in charge of the hen house. Why don't we? And there are people that actually think those guys are philanthropists and good Samaritans. Oh my gosh. I had a chance. Bill Gates' own wife knows better, doesn't she? Oh my gosh. Yeah. So look, it's obvious for guys like us who can perform and do perform critical thinking. And really, we're always looking sideways at everything the government ever says about anything. I'm in the process of relocating out of California
Where are you now in Cali? Are you in LA?
I'm in Simi Valley, which is in Ventura County.
Sure.
So
Yeah, I
I'm
know
about
Simi
an
Valley.
hour, an hour away from LA.
Yeah.
But we're trying to decide between Texas and Florida.
Of course.
And
those are the spots, are they not?
Yeah, they are. I was down in Florida a few months ago looking at some real estate in the Port Lucie area.
Yeah.
So I haven't really made up my mind yet, but I've been to like all over Florida and I've looked at properties and I want to be on the water and, so it's but I've got this gig that is probably the gateway to like I want to eventually I'm going to sell my intellectual property business. I want 200 million for it. And I've got an opportunity right now that I think over the next 4 or 5 months before the end of the year, we'll sign a deal with them, which will probably be about a $20 million licensing deal.
Wow.
For about 2 or 3 years. But the goal is, of course, to have them, once they get a taste of it, to come back in and then pay the bigger price and you don't get the whole thing.
Is this a company that's using your IP for financial service advisors, that kind of thing?
You're gonna love this story. Okay. So this is how this stuff just falls into my lap, right?
Yeah.
But you'll totally get it, right? So I wrote this Wright Exit Strategy a gazillion years ago, came out in 1997. I finished it in 96. I get this email from a guy named Steve. It says, gist of it is, I've read the Wright Exit Strategy 13 times. I used it as the core of my business. I built a multifamily office business, and I sold it to a large banking institution. But I've got some other private equity holdings. I feel like I should have hired you before I sold the company because I think I was missing some key things. And of course, I talked with him over the phone. Delightful guy. I basically said, look, Steve, it seems to me like you know pretty much all the same things I know. I'd have to charge you a minimum of $50,000. Pay any attention to this. But if you want, another brain looking at it, that's going to be your decision. His wife then said the same thing in a subsequent phone call. So he hired me anyway. And of course, I went back to Delaware and spent 2 afternoons with them because I'm an older guy. I used to be able to spend a day, but now it's like I break it into 2 afternoons. And he said about 2 hours into the first afternoon, he goes, you're already earned 3 times what I paid you. And then the next day I gave him a quantum leap, which in fairness occurred to me when I was in the bathroom the night before. I'm sitting here in the bathroom, sending
a little revelation in the restroom.
Yeah, you just got to, when it comes, right? And the older you get, the more time you spend in the restroom. So I had this great conference call with him, and he said to me, he says, the company that bought my company. So he's now still the managing director of the family office and runs it. And he said, he goes, we need these things at our family office. And the big giant bank that just bought us, they just completed a buyout on a private equity deal that they paid $500 million for. And they don't have an integration plan forward. Would you be interested in doing that and maybe licensing some IP to them? So that's how that came about.
Nice.
But in his email, he said, I don't know if you remember me, but I was in the course you taught in Tampa, Florida about 20 years ago.
Good Lord.
And he said, it changed my life. He said, my boss was there because the company he worked for was one of the sponsors of the event. And he said, I realized that I could learn whatever I was going to learn from my boss, but he was not going to be thinking about these kinds of things that you think about. And he said, when the time came for that to sort of run its course, I just took the book and used it as the template moving forward. But I love it. I don't know if you remember me, but 20 years ago, I was sitting in the audience with 300 other people.
Sorry.
But he was not offended when I said, Steve, I got to tell you, honestly, I don't remember meeting you, but it's nice to reconnect. So that's kind of like the normal story of my life. And as you know, with tangible physical books, they're far more likely to be read
Yeah.
And they like I every year I have at least one or two gigs where people will say something like, I've had your book for years, maybe for 20 years, and it's on my bookshelf and I never read it, but I kept noticing it either at my office or at my house. I just kept seeing it. And finally I decided to take it home and read it over the weekend. And, holy crap, I wish I would have read this when I first got it. And, how do we work now? And you can't do that with an ebook.
No, you can't.
Nobody's going to go that far back into their emails, right? So
and you can delete an ebook. You can't throw out a physical book. Most people
it's very hard for people to throw away.
They can't do it. They can't bring themselves to throw away a physical book, but you can delete an ebook like that. Nothing to it.
Or just ignore it.
Yeah. Or just,
so it's real. Like you'll think this is amazing. So I have a project in Arizona right now with a financial services company, and they're distributing Seeing the Elephant, which came out in 1992. And they emailed it out to about 200 people. And next week I'll be there doing back-to-back meetings with a dozen of the wealthiest people in their community. Wow. Who, with the exception of half of them who are clients, the other half are people that would never give them the time of day, by using a little booklet that I wrote in 1992.
Incredible.
And so, that's how I get licensing deals. I give people a little taste of something that's, you would think it's past its prime.
Yeah.
But it was funny when I was writing that, I decided intentionally to keep anything out that would date it too badly. And when I did a re-release of it in, when was it, 2007 or something, I did a little update at the beginning and an audio and at the end, and a very slight rewrite where I basically said, I didn't bother to change any of the tax information. I just said, all this has changed. So you need the updated version. You need to talk to your CPA, your lawyer, to get the updated version. So this is just for illustrative purposes. That was it. That was the total change I did, period. And
amazing. Pretty good.
I suspect that they'll distribute 250,000 copies.
Fantastic.
So those are the kinds of things I think you and I know how to do. It's probably just like breathing for us.
Yeah, totally.
I think somebody needs to do what you're doing.
Well, thank you.
It's just never going to be me.
I've enjoyed it. It's now just over 10 years that I've had bestseller publishing. We've worked with about 1,000, a little more than 1,000 authors at this point. But, like you said, people come for all kinds of reasons, all kinds of motivations. The next book, I have my Publish, Promote, Profit book, which is a Wall Street Journal bestseller. But my newest book, I hope to publish in the next 3 months. And that one is on legacy, writing your legacy book. Because I feel like that is, kind of like exactly what you're talking about. I feel like there is this huge element of people that are very successful and that are not leaving the lessons that they've learned over a 30-year, 40-year, 50-year career to the world and even to their family. To their children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren. I have a relative, my ancestors came from Russia right at the late 1800s, escaping persecution, and came through New York. And my last name is Kosberg. And good part of my relatives stayed in Russia prior to it becoming the Soviet Union. Long story short, I have a relative, Simeon Kosberg, who was basically the number 2 man in the Russian space program. Books have been written about him, even a more recent movie. There's all kinds of legend. There's he received the Order of Lenin, which is the highest civilian award in the Soviet Union. But there's nothing that I have from him, and my middle son actually works for NASA as a scientist. And I thought, if only there were something that he left, a book, notes. Now, of course, in the Soviet Union, it might have been destroyed and lit on fire, but hopefully not in America, right? Hopefully in America, if you have wisdom to pass on, you should pass it on. And so I'm excited about that element of my next book for people like the people that you're talking about.
Yeah, it's in the category of stewardship, and in the Seeing the Elephant. We'll email you a copy of that.
Please.
Audio.
Oh, yeah. Please.
I talked about this idea of multi-generational stewardship and thinking about what are the universal truths and principles and wisdom that we want to pass on to the next generations. And it was really fascinating that at the time, and I stumbled upon this idea of having a 100-year plan because early in my life, I was a martial artist. And so I was studying Zen and Buddhism and Eastern philosophy. And they have long used what's the 100-year plan to accomplish a goal. It turns out certain American Indian tribes also did that. Turns out that the wisest Greeks and Romans also did that. So I didn't originate the idea, but what I did was, refreshed it and put some legs on it in a way that no one had ever done. So when Seeing the Elephant came out with a 100-year plan, it was transcendent. And the vast majority of the engagements that I've had since then have been, how do I not ruin my children with this massive amount of wealth that I've created? Because this condition called affluenza, or sense of entitlement, is a major problem.
It is. I totally agree. It's a completely different problem than most people have to face, but it is gigantic to not ruin the future generations. Bruce, I found the Wright Exit Strategy online, but where can other people find Seeing the Elephant and the other things that you've written? Do you have these somewhere?
At macrostrategicdesign.com.
Gotcha.
They can go in and download free copies of Seeing the Elephant. I did a workbook for our 3-day licensing course called Macro Strategic Planning Your Life and Your Business. That's available for free.
Love it.
Like I said, and I've written hundreds of things. One of my favorites, and I just pulled this out of the archives and about 10 days ago, it's called an article called Playing God. And I'll send it to you. But
Please.
The gist of it is that one of my favorite books is Acres of Diamonds.
I love that book. Great book.
And I give it,
great idea. Yep.
I give away, in any given year, I might give away 1,000 copies of different books.
Cool.
But there's always a method to the madness. So I'm going to be doing a series. It would be an e-course. And the working title right now is Acres of Diamonds and Quantum Mind. And what I see very frequently, and the Playing God article is part of that curriculum, is that what we do naturally as human beings, like, for example, I'm a Neil Diamond fan. So if I get a new Neil Diamond album, my tendency is to think, who else do I know that might like the new Neil Diamond album? And I'm going to tell them I bought it. I thought it's great. You should give it a listen. And then I thought, well, why would I limit other people from getting that same message? Why don't I just send the message to my entire universe, my databases, my LinkedIn connections, et cetera? Why don't I just give everybody the chance to experience it and decide for themselves? So when you think about, the article, I don't use Neil Diamond, but I use a CPA firm who's got a particular tax strategy, and they think, okay, well, I've got, 37 clients this would apply to. I'm going to send it to them. Well, in quantum multidimensional thinking, we realize that if we send it to everybody connected to us, some of those people are going to be connected to ideal clients for us, and they will pass that article along if it's well written, which is the same strategy I use with books. So when we think of things in quantum multidimensional ways, we realize that every person is a majestic, colorful soul on this grand adventure we call life. And they each have their own ecosystem. So even though they may not personally find something that we've written, an article or a book or whatever, valuable at the moment, they might have an uncle or an aunt or a cousin or a friend or a boss for whom it would be a revelation.
Sure.
And they will pass it on, especially if it's physical and therefore transferable, like a physical book or physical article.
Right.
And so the whole purpose of the article is don't play God. Don't presume that you know who will get it and who will appreciate it and who won't. Just do what God actually does and send it to everybody, and then see who picks it up and runs with it.
See who's interested.
And so that's the gist of that article. But it plays directly into Acres of Diamonds, which I'm sure that the heirs who inherited the benefits of that book are not doing anything like this. Of course, I have to get their permission. I'll do a revenue share with them, and I'll have my lawyer figure all that stuff out. I'm going to write the course. I'm not going to handle the contracting or any of that. But the idea is, how do we take Acres of Diamonds, refresh it, and present it in a way that helps every entrepreneur, every author, every consultant understand that not only do they have rough, uncut diamonds in their own acre of universe, but so too does each person. They each have their own ecosystem. Right. And within those ecosystems are where your greatest opportunities and deals are going to come from. Why would you self-limit from participating in those opportunities? Because why? Like, give me 3 good reasons why you don't hit the send button.
Can't give you one.
Your entire data.
Can't give you one there. Yeah. Let everybody have an opportunity.
It's just blocking yourself from those opportunities. And it's limiting others because you're not sharing great ideas with other people.
Exactly.
And just, take the limitations off your thinking. Think about it as the universe as a whole series of, intricately connected and from multiple angles ecosystems. Yeah. And then how do we take a uplifting narrative that benefits people and help it go viral? Well, if you only send it to 7 people, I'm sorry, the probability of viral is very close to 0. But if you send it to 17,000 people, your probability of then growing to 50 or 60 or 100,000 people, you just need one champion. And I discovered this very early in my life. I used that insurance company. They got reprints of the article through Rick and Chrissy Madden's. So they paid them X amount of money for the reprints for the people that were coming to the event. Then they went and they bought like another 50,000 reprints and used it as a way to go get new business and form new relationships with people. And so there was an exponential effect in that it wasn't just about paying me $2,500 or $5,000 or whatever a speaking fee would be back in those days. It was how do we, I sort of come down to this, the realization. Nobody wakes up in the morning and thinks, what can I do to make Bruce Wright more successful today? What they do is they wake up and they think, how am I going to make myself more successful? And guys like you and me give them the how. We give them the path. Yep. And I tell everybody that's buying my stuff, look, you can use my stuff, however you're willing to pay for it, however long you're willing to use it. You're going to start singing your own song. And you got to get the music out of your soul and put it on paper. The cathartic effect of that is you become a much better messenger. It will grow you and expand you in some really important ways that are unimaginable right now. You have to go through the catharsis to get the impact. And you can start by, giving away other people's books. But the best path is to create your own content. And I just, I'm besieged with people who want to help me make an extra $1,000 a month on LinkedIn by becoming a best-selling author, missing the point that I became a best-selling author through actual book sales, as opposed to
what a unique way to do
3 a.m. on a Tuesday and it reaches best. Yeah. I sold 300 books at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday, and I'm a best-selling.
Oh, believe me, they're not even
gosh.
selling that many. They're not even selling that many, Bruce.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. I know it's crazy. And then that's for the rest of your life, you're a best-selling author. Ooh, nobody picks up my stuff and cares whether it was best-selling or not. All they care about is this is the audience. Yeah. Do you have something for me that's directly relevant that nobody else can do for me? Like that's it. It has to be entirely about them. And that's the recipe when I'm writing is, okay, every single page has to be resonant with the reader in a personal way. Yeah. Like every page has to do that. And if you can't do that, you got to go back and rewrite pages until they do. There's one thing to write something that people, they pick up a book, they look at the cover, they flip it over, they look at the back cover, and then they decide if they want to look at the table of contents, and then they decide if they want to pick a chapter somewhere in the middle of the book. So you've got to have this really compelling, resonant series of ideas and details and how to, these kinds of things. And, let's be blunt, most people don't do that. They simply provide broad strokes, and then you're supposed to figure it out for yourself. As Michael Gerber?
Sure.
So Michael and I were having this friendly debate one day. This has got to be 25 years ago, right? And I brought him in to do some speaking gigs on these multi-day events at some of the really big companies. And they were trying to, connect with entrepreneurs. And Michael serves a segment of the market that, I don't have any interest in. And, he said to me, Wright, you pay all this attention to all these little micro details. It's like, just stop doing that. Just do the broad strokes. Let them figure it out for themselves. And I'm sitting there thinking, Michael someday might sell his company for $5 million.
Yeah.
I'm going to sell mine for hundreds of millions of dollars. I'm pretty sure my recipe's better than his. But
yeah,
you can get hyperbole and broad strokes everywhere, but can you get relevant, personally relevant, dynamic action steps? And the answer is yes, you can, if the source is capable of delivering that.
Yeah.
That's the space where I think you guys will do a great job in sort of the vetting of the material. And I'm not willing to read their manuscripts. Obviously.
I understand. Don't worry. We have teams of people that can do that.
I literally every month I have probably 4 or 5 people requesting that I read their manuscript and write a quote for the back cover of their book. And I have no interest in even opening the manuscript. The other thing is that if I do open their manuscript, they'll later say something I wrote that I plagiarized from them. That's a real problem in the music industry. It's why most successful musicians will not listen to your mixtape that you create of the songs that you wrote.
I never knew that.
Yeah, they don't want to be accused of plagiarism down the road. And
makes sense.
Yeah, so that is like the other thing. I really have enough on my hands just shutting my own brain down at night and creating my own content. I don't need to pollute it with
somebody else's noise.
Yeah. And, listen, it's really hard with friends or family members because so much of, I kind of have to be nice to them and I kind of have to look at what they write and I want to be supportive, but so much of the time it's just the repeating of, here's an example. It's never too late to be anything you want to be, except an astronaut or the NBA slam dunk champion or an Olympic athlete.
Yeah. Or the home run champ.
go down a list of about 85,000 things
right.
that it's too late for you to be if you're 35.
Yeah. Yeah. Or if you're 5'8" and, can't jump out of the gym.
If you're Spud Webb and you're 5'7" and you have a 50-inch vertical, yes, you can win the NBA slam dunk championship. Yeah. Not because you were better slam dunker than Dominique Wilkins, who came in second.
Right.
But because
you're Spud Webb.
You're 5'7" and you could do a 360 dunk.
Yeah.
Like, that's all he had to do. And I was like,
and people couldn't believe it.
Yeah, so he wins. And Dominique's over there going, are you kidding me? I don't even have to take a 2-step approach to do that. But, Dominique comes in second. But yeah, there's that anomaly, right? And so you have all kinds of people offering advice that is, here's another example I think you'll appreciate of.
I have should we set up another call? Because we've been going for like an hour and 15 minutes almost. I didn't expect that, but it's been fantastic.
I felt like half an hour to me. Yeah, let's just send you the Seeing the Elephant and a PDF of the Transcendent Thought.
I am totally intrigued.
Yeah, if you want physical copies, just email your physical address and we'll send you the actual books. But because I kind of look at you as an extension of my ecosystem because I can't do or won't do any of the things that you're doing. But I love this idea of how do you get music out of people? How do you get them to express their genius in a productive, positive way? Like, instead of attacking capitalism, what if you, I don't know, came up with an alternative that was actually better than your current replacement of communism?
Yeah.
Like, based on your background, you totally appreciate what I'm saying. You live in Florida that's populated with a massive number of Cubans who are like,
yeah,
are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah,
I thought I was leaving all that crap behind.
They're going bananas, man.
Yeah, and they're in Cuba, they're going crazy. And then
They're
here in America, you got BLM saying that it's, it's all because of the sanctions. It's our fault. Yeah. Again, it's white supremacy. That's the problem.
Wow. Bruce, thanks so much for being on the podcast. Great to have you here. For those of you who are interested in learning a little bit more, perhaps getting Bruce's books, you can go to macrostrategicdesign.com. You can get a copy of the Wright Exit Strategy, or Seeing the Elephant, or any number of the books that were mentioned on the podcast today. Please go do that. You'll love connecting with Bruce. He's been a fantastic guest and somebody that has a wealth of understanding and knowledge in this area. Bruce, thanks again so much for being with me today.